it's already happening now. Wall Street has accepted it. With El Salvador making legal tender, there's going to be more companies putting on the balance sheet. The people who have real wealth in this world, people who are the ones moving the financial markets. They really didn't have an access to Bitcoin before. But now with the ETFs, you have the biggest companies in the world, like BlackRock, really putting out marketing material.
Everybody talked about the money inflow. But I think the bigger part is that they control media outlets, they control narratives. And if they have an incentive to speak good about Bitcoin, this will change the whole game.
The tide is slowly turning.
You have a really interesting career path and path in general. And I have this, like I always try to find a theme for a podcast. And I always see like, okay, what is this person doing? What did the person do in the past? And I saw that you went kind of in Hollywood with Universal Pictures. So it was from you really like the transition from Hollywood to shitcoin casino to Bitcoin only. And I'm really interested in that path you took there and what you did in between. And then we have also a lot of questions in Bitcoin related and to marketing also related, because you have been the head of marketing of Bitpanda, you have been the chief marketing officer of Robo Wunderkind. I don't know what that is, but it seems to be not that Bitcoin related. Maybe I'm wrong. And then obviously now for almost 3 years, the CMO of Relai. And yeah, so maybe let's start with the first phase where you went from Universal Pictures, a big corporation, Hollywood, we can refer it to crypto exchange of Bitpanda and being there the head of marketing. Why did you transition to crypto company? Was this alongside with your discovery of crypto and Bitcoin?
Yeah, gosh, that's been a while since I thought about that. So I obviously that wasn't my first job. I had jobs before. I actually started initially in London in agencies, and I usually and mostly worked on gaming clients. So a lot of my background is on Xbox and PlayStation on these two accounts. Releasing big games with them for a few years, releasing consoles. So I was always I started in this entertainment sector, and my personal passion has always been the film industry, the movies. So I always really wanted to get into that industry. And then with Universal Pictures, when they came knocking on the door, it literally felt like a dream come true. Like, wow, I get to do my dream job. And there's a lesson there already that sometimes be careful what you wish for, because it might not always be great. Uh, the the movie business is good. Obviously, it was a great school, a great company. I worked on lots of really good releases, like Fast and Furious 6 at a time, and Despicable Me 2, and like some indie movies as well. It's really good, but I also found out while working there that it's actually not for me, that I actually wasn't enjoying myself. It's an industry full of extroverts. Everybody's an extrovert. As you can imagine, anything with show business and movies, literally everybody has a very big ego as well. And I'm not really an extrovert. I'm quite an introverted person. So I was really not a great fit culturally, I would say. Needless to say, I stayed there for 2 years, but I was not really happy. And then also, we were just not really happy with my partner anymore in London, so we decided to move abroad, and we came here to Vienna, and then I decided to make a cut and stop working for big companies and big corporations and start working for startups. And the whole crypto, Bitcoin, and Bitpanda thing came as a total accident. I didn't really know about Bitcoin. I mean, I heard about it a few years before that, but I totally rejected that. Like, I didn't look into it. I thought it was ridiculous. And then when Bitpanda came to be, it was essentially just me looking for a startup job. And it so happens that Bitpanda was looking for a head of marketing. So I had applied, and this was 2017. I looked into Bitcoin then properly and what Bitpanda does. And obviously Bitcoin really caught my eye, and I just thought that, wow, like I shouldn't have ignored this. It's incredible. And that's when I already started having a skin in the game. And then the interview process with Bitpanda lasted a couple of months, and then I started with them in January 2018. And that's basically how I got into the industry. That's how I discovered really Bitcoin this last month of 2017, early 2018. So I have basically joined just before the 2017 bull market when it ran up to $20,000, and been in it ever since then.
It's amazing. And you also told me right before we started that this was a different time for you, 2018, 2017, when you were at the Bitpanda company. And then
Yeah,
with a small step in between, you came in, I think, 2021 in September, you came into Relay as the CMO, which is a completely different company. Like Bitpanda, as I remember, they have a token themselves as a exchange. Relay does not have this. Relay has no other cryptocurrencies except
yeah,
Bitcoin. They are Bitcoin only focused. And we covered that on the podcast quite well, actually, with Julian, with Adam, with Arsen. We had a lot of relayers already on, and they're fascinating
good.
story. And also, it's also fascinating that Julian managed to get so many interesting people in the company. Maybe we can also touch on that later. But
Yeah.
my first question would be like, um, the phase, how was this different 2018 with the Bitpanda, and why did you then decide in 2021 to join a Bitcoin only company? And where you,
Yeah.
before you started there, you probably already went in your head with a Bitcoin only mindset, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, 2018, I mean, everybody who worked at Bitpanda and joined, I would say that the initial sort of culture and feeling towards the company was very same as it is at Relay now. We all felt that we are part of something that's going to, be bring on a revolution that we are really working on, not just for a company, but a movement. And that's how really crypto was in 2018. It was very much the old world against the new world. There was yet no real divide between sort of Bitcoin and crypto and shitcoins and stuff like that. So them offering a bunch of other coins was not really a problem at all. But to be honest, it was also different of how new coins were added at Bitpanda at the time. There was a bit of due diligence. Now, in all honesty, obviously I'm not working there anymore, so this is just what I perceive from the outside. It's basically anything goes, doesn't matter what kind of project it is, everything is listed. Back in the day, it was literally people that you would know from the industry. So there would be, projects that are launched and everybody knows everybody. So people who were running exchanges would know people who would run these projects because there weren't as many yet. But now, nobody really knows who's behind certain projects in the crypto space. So that was very different. There was really no such sort of bad taste and feeling towards crypto in general. But as the time went on there, Bitpanda obviously went through massive growth. I was employee number 30 when I joined. When I was leaving, we already had over 200 people. My marketing team went from just me to managing 10 people, I think, when I was leaving, or 12. So a huge growth over 2 years. It became a unicorn in a time. Just from a startup nobody knew about, it became Austria's, I think, first unicorn as well. And going through this process is very tiring. It's obviously has its challenges and it's long working hours, and you miss out on family life, and overall it drains you. So after 2 years, I essentially decided that I really don't want to be part of it anymore, and I left. And I took a break completely from it as well. And that's when Robo Wunderkind came by, which is nothing to do with crypto. It's a kids robots educational tool essentially. And I just did that purely just to take a break from the whole finance fintech world completely. But after a few months, I started to miss it, and I really wanted to get back into it. So after a few months, essentially, I started just looking around. I was quite close to joining OpenSea, for example, but I really didn't agree with anything that was out in the market, and I was really wanted to focus more on Bitcoin only because, on a personal level, that's what really piqued my interest the most as well. Everything else just felt like not really interesting. And this is when also the whole movement started from people actually focusing more on Bitcoin rather than the whole crypto thing, and this divide started to happen. And then I got approached by a headhunter, and they just basically given me all the details of the company without giving me the name. And I said, yes, great, sounds interesting, but I need a name so I can actually look into it before we have any, before we progress into anything. And he told me it was Relay. I looked into Relay and I was like, I've seen this company before. And so it just happens that I actually seen one of the memes that they posted on Twitter. I was like, that's where I heard of them. And at the time, obviously, Relay was quite small compared to where it is now. And then I met Julian, and for me, it was very important that I get along with the founder, essentially, and we just clicked, and that's basically how I started.
Yeah, it's also fascinating for me. I sometimes, like most of the time, I ask people that are now working fully in Bitcoin, how different is fiat from fiat job to Bitcoin job. But it's interesting also that for me, fiat is kind of related to crypto in general, except
Yeah,
Bitcoin, because I see like most of the stuff that crypto people are doing, they are trying to copy what is in the fiat world and put it on a blockchain. That's basically for me
yeah,
the whole premise of crypto. And so I see a lot of comparison actually between crypto and fiat when you see it like that. Do you have any differences between like Bitpanda and Relay? You said you kind of went tired from Bitpanda. It was too much, or like something was not good there. So why it's Relay, I think it's also really fast growth. It's I can imagine also like a lot of challenges happening there. Like what's different between those companies and like the culture and the mindset and the
yeah.
people?
I think it's mainly the focus. So obviously, if you are only focused on Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, it really allows you just to be laser focused and sort of remove all the noise. While at Bitpanda, you kind of always chase the new high. There's always something next that we will be adding a new coin. We'll be doing another thing. We're adding now precious metals. Since then, now they have ETFs, they have stocks. Essentially, they went a different path because they went the path of being a company or a brokerage firm for everything, from crypto to Bitcoin to stocks to gold to basically you can trade anything there. So what they're really trying to do is just trying to digitize the traditional financial world with a bit of crypto. They started from the crypto world, but really they're mainly trying to just basically make this old financial world digital. While when you work at a Bitcoin company, you don't really care about the rest of the financial world. You're really there to work on a change of bringing Bitcoin and Bitcoin being the competitor to the old financial world and system. So you're not really focused on bringing all things from this world and trying to change them, like you mentioned, putting them on a blockchain, so to speak. And obviously, the difference is mainly that if you're focused on Bitcoin, there isn't as much money in it as if you focused on the whole financial system. That's why the biggest investors are focused on crypto, and that's where they see the money is. And it kind of makes sense if you really think about it. If you have just one thing, you have a certain amount of volume, certain amount of revenues. But why don't we add another coin and another coin and another coin? That's always more volume and always more revenues because people are interested in it. So it's really, I would say, it really depends on what is it that you want to achieve and how clear you are of what kind of a company you want to be. And that's what I liked about Relay. There was about Bitcoin and nothing else. And the more actually you understand Bitcoin, you realize that it just makes sense. There is good money to be made in Bitcoin as well. It just might not be as interesting for the outside world as the crypto one. So if you're sort of uneducated in the whole world of Bitcoin, crypto looks more interesting because you had crypto projects, you had the ICOs, then you had the NFTs last year or 2 years ago. There's going to be a next thing. There's always a next hot thing that people can be like, oh, this is innovation, but it's actually not innovation. It's just something dressed as innovation.
It's fascinating because I also see where a lot of Bitcoin only companies they have obviously less volume, obviously less money, because when you see like the biggest Bitcoin only exchanges against like Binance and Coinbase and the big exchanges, do you
Yeah,
see this changing? Because I think that Bitcoin in general is really good for business, and also like for me, like when you take this podcast, obviously when I get more cryptos involved and then talk about everything, maybe in the short term, I have the potential to be bigger as a podcaster. I
Yeah,
lose the Bitcoin only crowd, but the Bitcoin only crowd is just developing. It's a small crowd still.
yeah,
When I have even lists of Twitter accounts that are Bitcoin only, and it's not a long list. It's like you can do the list in like a few days when you work through Twitter. So I think it's still a small thing, and I could do the podcast about everything. Some Bitcoiners would also watch me, and obviously with exchanges and all the other businesses, it's the same.
yeah,
But looking out, I think being focused on Bitcoin only will be an extreme marketing advantage also, because you prove to be Bitcoin only and did not be seduced by money
yeah.
and had a passion. Do you see this Bitcoin only being smaller volume, smaller, um, uh, less budget, changing in like 10 years when we know, oh shit, all those shit coins are actually shit? Or is it a long process over like 50, 100, 200 years where we have to slowly get out of this crypto? It's like, do you think,
Yeah.
to, yeah,
I don't think so. I also, maybe controversially, I don't think that sort of the altcoin or shitcoins or whatever you want to call it are going to go away. I think it's just going to, they will be rebranded to what they really are, which is gambling. And I think there is obviously space in the market for gambling as well. And gambling in itself is not bad unless you obviously, bet your life savings on it. And I think it's a natural part of the financial markets. There's something that's super risky, super shady, but kind of regulated. For me, I think it should exist. My biggest problem is how it's being marketed right now with the biggest exchanges, including Coinbase, Bitpanda. It's right there, essentially next to the serious stuff. So if we call, let's say, Bitcoin, stocks, ETFs, the serious stuff, but then at the same time, at the same platform, you also have Shiba Inu and Dog with Half or whatever it's called. Like, I think there should be a distinction on these platforms where you come in and it's like you can invest in anything. Do you want gold? We have gold for you. Do you want Bitcoin? We have Bitcoin for you. These things here, you can also buy them. Just be very careful. This is super. This is gambling essentially. This is the casino part of our business. And I think if you really clarify that to people, I think then it's okay. I find it dishonest and maybe a little bit on on the low on the moral spectrum to package it up as the future of finance, or as something as a revolution or something essentially that's really good. I think if they brand it and market it as something that's gambling and this is a casino and you can try your luck, fine, why not? And back to your question about Bitcoin only. I don't think Bitcoin only is going to, in the short term, I can't speak about the future, but in the short term, really get very close to Coinbase and Bitpanda. It's just, they just deal with more things, the volume, and the market clearly wants these other things. Whether we believe in it or not, the market decides in the end. So clearly they will be continuing making money. I think there is going to be a consolidation though of these big companies, also of the smaller ones as well. But in terms of Bitcoin only being an advantage, I really think so. Also from a marketing point of view and a branding point of view. And you said it right. If you start sort of focusing on everything, you probably will get more guests, more listeners. But then you lose your niche, you lose your edge. And I believe that as people, as companies and brands, you should stand for something. That's what makes you special. That's what makes you an individual. If you like everything, if you want to be an expert on everything, you will be essentially boring. Nobody wants to, I don't want to speak to people who agree with the same things that I like. I want to speak to people who like different things. So then it makes a different and interesting conversation because I like movies. You like something else. Great, we can talk. Otherwise, it's just an echo chamber. And I think when it comes to brands, it's just what separates you from the rest. It's what gives you character. And a great example that I always use is Tesla. Tesla would probably sell more cars if they were also starting combustion engine cars, because obviously there is more market. And now we have the Tesla brand with it. But after a while, and probably very fast, they would lose what Tesla is. They would lose the meaning of Tesla. It wouldn't be special anymore because now they offer everything else. you also offer cars, and then you're also playing in a different arena. Then you're up against BMW, and that will eat up Tesla. Right now, you're different. You're playing in a smaller, specialized arena, and there is room for that. We are Bitcoin only because we believe in Bitcoin, but also it's our niche, and we know that we don't need to worry about the shitcoin casinos. They are there, obviously, they have a market share, but sooner or later, as probably you know as well, there's a journey that people go through and they start in the shitcoinery world and then they sort of end up in the Bitcoin world. So it's okay that they're around. It's okay what they do. The markets will decide whether they will have a future or not. I believe the market has already decided that Bitcoin does have a future with the Wall Street ETF approvals and overall positivity towards Bitcoin and the understanding of Bitcoin that you can see is happening more and more. When it comes to crypto, the jury is still out. I think there is a future for it, but the market is going to decide.
When you mentioned the markets and the stories behind Bitcoin only and how crypto is different. And for me, it's always interesting how we can market Bitcoin better. And you, as a chief marketing officer of a Bitcoin only company, I have an kind of a pace change now in the podcast where I'm like, how do we make sure in Bitcoin? Because I think Bitcoin is in the broader sense just money. If, like it's money, it's an asset. I always say I'm there for it till it's the base layer of our financial system, because then it's boring. It's just there. But
Yeah,
the rise up to this point will be really interesting to document. That's why I'm having this goal to this year interview 300 people in Bitcoin, and I'm
nice.
now at 65. So I'm making my process in March. But I'm always trying to figure out how we can market Bitcoin better. Of course, it will market itself kind of because we all have the incentive, because I have the incentive to be a really good spokesperson in Bitcoin and interview interesting guests, so I get more views. So I have the incentive without having any incentive from a Bitcoin corporation to be really good in marketing Bitcoin. Really
Yeah,
has to be the incentive to be really good in marketing Bitcoin, because then customers come to Relay and buy Bitcoin over their services.
yeah.
But in general, how do you think Bitcoiners should tell stories about Bitcoin? What stories should we tell if we come to new people, to no corners, to pre-coiners that don't understand Bitcoin or have some FUD line in their head, like, oh, it's
Yeah.
environmentally bad for them. Like, what do you think is the best? And obviously, it depends from human to human, but what are the best like stories you would suggest going to?
I think, like you said, it really depends on a person. I would always start with what is the pain point that the person feels. And Bitcoin can be many things for many people. I would say in sort of global and in general, what we need to do as an industry, especially companies, is to really, really lay off the technical term and understand that people do not care about, on-chain, second layer, and all these sort of things. They care about how can I use this in a very simple, user-friendly way. They they get scared of big words, and you need to translate what Bitcoin is to just simple terms and make it very easy. Bitcoin is easy, and you know it as well, that once you actually, start making transactions, once you start buying it and saving it and hodling it, it's just a matter of practice. I think overall the technology still has a long way to go to be super user friendly, but it's going that way for sure. And in the meantime, I think from a marketing point of view, from podcasters' point of view, from content creators' point of view, is to really take the big ideas and turn them into digestible and understandable topics that people can understand. So you cannot really you cannot really sort of focus too much on the tech aspect. Nobody really cares about, you know, it's decentralized. It's just a word, but to a newbie, it means nothing. If you tell them Bitcoin is great because it's decentralized, I don't know what it means. And even if you explain it to them, they get lost in just the explanation. I think it's better to listen to people and understand. So, what is the problem? What is your goal? What is it that you want to achieve? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And then eventually you'll arrive at the problem, which probably is they want to make more money. They don't know how to save. They're struggling with the inflation or whatever the problem is. I think it's sort of tackling it from that point of view. I don't like the approach where people preach at other people, like, oh, you should be into Bitcoin. I also don't like people rejecting shitcoiners and really having this aggressive attitude. I think what we should definitely do in terms of like better marketing is to be more welcoming. And there are no stupid questions. You're not a stupid person for asking stupid questions. And feel free to ask. I'll take the time to explain it to you. I think that's the right approach. And that's sort of what Relay is trying to do. We're not really a brand that is trying to be toxic. We are a brand that is very much inclusive. Everybody's welcome. We try to break down complex topics into really simple ideas and simple content. That's why we do so much, so many memes on social media. Memes are a great tool to translate something very complex into something digestible, funny, and super brief. It's just one image essentially. Um, and that works. Also, educational content. We always think about, all right, so we have this blog article. How can we make this more dummy proof? Like, does this actually make sense? Are we now just being lost in our own bubble? Or if you show it to your grandmother, will she understand what you're talking about? So there's always this really understanding that you're not talking to Bitcoiners, you're talking to people who are outside looking in. And you need to also take this approach of understanding that they don't know what we're talking about. We need to understand them, and then we can create better content, better marketing for them.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Now, I always make the girlfriend test because my girlfriend is not in Bitcoin at all.
Yeah,
And when I listen to the guests, I try to figure out, oh, would she understand it? Is that something she can digest? Because she's smart, she's in
yeah,
university, she is working, she's bright in the sense she understands things. But if we are getting to a point where we just throw around a lot of buzzwords that don't mean
yeah,
anything, like decentralized layers, stuff like that, or multi-sig or custodial, like people outside of Bitcoin don't know what those things mean.
yeah,
And I always try to, as you said, ask the stupid questions that are not stupid, because in every Bitcoin conversation, and probably also here, there's someone in there that is just completely new to Bitcoin.
yeah,
He just randomly clicked on the thumbnail. It was suggested there on the feed. I don't know how he came here, but somehow he came here and he's thinking, what is Bitcoin? So we should always, as you said, inclusive. But it's also important, I think, to call out scams.
yeah,
Um, uh, in the sense, it's important to call them out. But in calling them out, you can also give them a platform. So it's a it's a difficult thing to do. What I want to do is now is when you look at newcomers coming in, it's different from bear markets to bull markets. I think it's uh,
yeah,
in bear, like I always talk normal about Bitcoin. I'm talking about Bitcoin when I'm getting asked. And the interesting thing that happens, especially in my normal field job that I had till some days ago, I was there at 6 years. And
okay,
in 2021, I talked a lot about Bitcoin because I was asked a lot about Bitcoin. And most people bought then. And
yeah,
when the downturn came with like down to 30,000, not a lot of people talked in the company also about Bitcoin, because it's now like it's not in the headlines, it's not in the price discoveries, like people don't talk about it. And now it comes again.
yeah,
And the interesting thing is, in the middle of the bear market, people say like, "Oh, why did you tell me about Bitcoin when it was like 60,000?" I was like, I've talked about Bitcoin since it's like 7,000. So it's
yeah,
for me, it's always the same, but the interest is different. How is now from a company point of view, like Relay, how is it different marketing for Bitcoin? when you're in a bull market versus when you're in a bear market? How do you see like the different marketing approaches there, and do you also see like differences in like how people buy, how their behaviors are in the bull and bear markets, or is it Bitcoin only DC it runs smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of business, obviously, the whether people buy or sell, that's good for us. We obviously are a brokerage, but what's really great is basically the price is a great marketing tool. When the price starts rallying, you don't really need to do much. You just need to be there so people can find you, and they want to because they feel the FOMO themselves. And when we had this sort of expectation for the ETF approvals that were happening in January, sort of that period, that 1 week where people were unsure what this is going to mean to price, it was crazy. We had really great volumes, like record day after record day. And then obviously once people understood that, all right, the price is not doing anything, because there was this like 2 week period where it kind of remained flat. It went up, I think 5K or something like that, and then it didn't do much. And I think people are expecting straight away that it's going to go to 100K. So then we also started seeing that, all right, people are now being more cautious. They're unsure what's happening. So it really is always tying back to sort of human psychology and how they are. And in terms of how to market in a bull market and bear market, that's pretty much the same thing. In a bull market, everybody's interested. So, for example, during a bull market, we cooperate with content creators who aren't just Bitcoiners, who are personal finance or tech or anything like that. And their audience is more receptive to the Bitcoin message. We also found that if we do this during the bear market, there is zero interest from their audiences. So somebody who's a tech YouTuber, their audience will not care about Bitcoin at all during a bear market, because for them, Bitcoin is dead then. It crashed 40%, it's over. But obviously, people who have the Bitcoin audience, such as you're building now, they will always be interested, whether the price is down or price is up. So in a bear market, you try to, as we say, you build during this period, but you still focus on the Bitcoiners. There's so many Bitcoiners you can still sort of get on board as well. And obviously, there's always new Bitcoiners who enter the space as well. And they discover you, they discover Blocktrainer, they discover everybody who creates content. But they're new, they're curious, and they don't have a company yet, or they're looking for the great partner that they can use for their Bitcoin journey. And when the bull market comes, that's when you see, FTX arenas and whatnot. Like that's also how crypto operates. In a bull market, they go out and they sort of step into the general public, and they get attached to sports, to Formula One, to whatever it is, because then people are more receptive to it.
It's an interesting perspective. I never saw it like that. And price is obviously like a great marketing tool. And in marketing, we are always like there's so many different metrics you can measure success with, like
Yeah.
views, impressions. There's like conversion rates. There's so many different metrics we can track. I think with Bitcoin it's harder. There are obviously like the price as a success metrics. There's like how many wallets and addresses are there.
Yeah.
Then if we would have those numbers, it would be also interesting how many hardware wallets have been sold, stuff like that. How do you go ahead and measure success of Bitcoin? How do you see like, if we hit this in 10 years in Bitcoin, Bitcoin is actually a success. We were on the right path. How do you have like metrics, or what do you look at if Bitcoin was successful in like 10, 20 years time?
So success for Bitcoin, not for a Bitcoin company.
Bitcoin, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we're already on that path, and I think the success for Bitcoin is going to be when it isn't seen anymore by pretty much anybody in the market as something that's risky, something that is used by scammers, something that is basically widely accepted that this is now uh, an asset, just like every other asset there but it's just the best asset out there. How people view gold is because it's been around for a long time and people do not see it as anything risky. How people view the stock market, now that's a debate. Some people consider it being risky, but this is more about how people view investing in itself. And it's more about, once you understand investing and then you look at the assets, is Bitcoin a legit asset in your eyes? And if the answer is going to be for most people, yes, it is, I think that's the success. I think we, and I actually quite like, I listened to a podcast with Michael Saylor recently, and he was saying that we do not have enemies. We just have people who haven't really understood Bitcoin yet. And I think that's a very good approach to have. And even governments, they're not really enemies. I think they're all trying to understand it. Even Elizabeth Warren, she's not an enemy. She's just not educated on the topic. And this is, I think, also what I mean is that we have tried, the whole toxic approach, and I can understand the logic behind it. I just don't think that's the right way forward if you want Bitcoin to succeed. If you want Bitcoin to succeed, you need to have a conversation, even with people who are really against it. And then it's another topic if they refuse to see the facts and the numbers and the logic behind it. And it's then obviously the conversation is not going to lead anywhere. But if everybody's open to learning, I think we can achieve this, and it's already happening now. Wall Street has accepted it. We had El Salvador making legal tender. Rumors of other countries. There's gonna be more companies putting on the balance sheet. It's really just sort of really the tide is slowly turning. I think more and more people understand it, and because of the whole thing with the ETFs, I think especially people who are invested in finance, they will start understanding it. So far there really wasn't a way for them to get into it. And I'm not talking about, my generation or younger generation, people who have real wealth in this world, people who are the ones moving the financial markets. They really didn't have an access to Bitcoin before. So obviously they didn't understand it because it was just so remotely far away from them. But now with the ETFs, you have the biggest companies in the world, like BlackRock, really putting out marketing material. Now you can look up what Bitcoin is. If you go into your terminal on Bloomberg, you can type it in and Bitcoin comes up. And now it's a real thing. Before that, it was just something that you really couldn't even get to because it just wasn't part of your world. So I think it's happening now, and this is only going to speed up. This is really only going to speed up.
Yeah, definitely. If Bitcoin is the thing that we think it is, and I truly think that it is that money that we all need, then all 8 billion people will come into this thing, and we should welcome them with open arms and explain it to them. And I've seen personally in my personal life people coming from Bitcoin haters to Bitcoin lovers. I
Yeah,
myself came from calling Bitcoin a scam to having a Bitcoin only podcast. So like there, even Michael Saylor, like there are so many famous examples from people that hated or made negative comments about Bitcoin and then came to being a lover of Bitcoin, a believer in Bitcoin. And I think even if we're toxic, I think we cannot kill Bitcoin, but we can definitely slow down the process. If we are welcoming people, if we are warm to everyone and saying, hey, there is this thing, there is Bitcoin. And this is also how I do it in personal life. I don't talk about Bitcoin unless someone brings it up.
yeah, same.
Because I have all the social media accounts. Like, if you follow me anywhere, you know that I'm the Bitcoin guy. And so, if someone wants to get educated, they can always approach me, always speak with me, or just listen to all the podcasts.
Yeah,
The interesting part about this strategy is like you just put out that you are the Bitcoiner. You like if you want to be asked about Bitcoin, you should clarify somehow that you are the Bitcoin guy. Otherwise,
yeah,
nobody will come to you. But once you did that, people will come to you because they have questions. Because the
yeah,
price went up 60,000, and they want to know, oh, should I buy now? Where should I buy? How do I store? Like they have this basics question. So that's I think the
yeah,
best marketing strategy. Just being there as an educator for interested people. That's
yeah, exactly. That's my approach as well. I feel uncomfortable talking about it and bringing it up with like, I work for a Bitcoin company. Do you want to learn about Bitcoin? Let me tell you about Bitcoin. It's super freaky. You come across as like, all right, you're trying to sell me something. And I think it's better. Everybody knows, on my social media as well that I'm into Bitcoin and they know that I work for a Bitcoin company. So if you want to ask, in fact, the other day I just posted on LinkedIn, if you want to ask me a question about Bitcoin, feel free to come into my DMs. There are no stupid questions. And that's the approach uh, that I take with everyone. I don't want to talk about it, but once you ask a question, I'm happy to chat to you about it.
Definitely. What is for you in when we look out now, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, however long you want to look out? What's the most exciting topic inside of Bitcoin for you right now? Like, what are you like consuming right now? What are you looking forward right now in Bitcoin?
The most exciting topic for me, it's nothing technical. I mean, Lightning is great. We will be launching Lightning on Relay, a bit of marketing. But the most exciting thing is actually this shift in perception that is happening. I think it's very exciting to see the thing you believed to be true to start playing out in real life. I mean, just like 2017, 18, 19, even 2020, it was still thought of like, this is a bubble, it's going to pop, this is for scammers. It wasn't what it is now. And this is just the beginning. And I really am enjoying how slowly, like bit by bit, it is changing. I had an interesting conversation recently with someone in my family who asked me like, what would you do with 200,000 if it was given to you? And I basically said I will put all of it into Bitcoin. It's like, no, it's it is it is too risky. I can't do that. And then I asked them, why do you think it's risky? Based on what criteria do you think it's risky? And essentially, it came down to the fact that I have read about it that it's risky. And funnily enough, they were basically talking about this recent ECB article that came out that Bitcoin is about to die. They published a blog post I think 2 weeks ago, the European Central Bank, and then some news website picked it up and basically wrote about it why Bitcoin is basically fucked. Sorry for the F word. So they were referring to that, and essentially I think this is the exciting part because sooner or later, even the ECB will be won over. I think I think this is going to happen in the next 10 years, where governments will even the Fed, even the ECB, governments around the world will start seeing it in a different light. The perception is going to change, and it's going to change because of Wall Street, because they control the money. And this change of perception is super exciting to see. And then to go back to your previous question about what is the success, then I think it is this. Once you tell them what to do with 200,000 and you tell them Bitcoin, they'll be like, okay. There's not going to be a fear anymore because already in the mindset of people, it's going to be that I have not heard anything bad about it. You know, I think right now, if you tell somebody what to do with 200K and say, put it all in gold, it would be like, there wouldn't be fear. There would just be like, how do I do that? And I think Bitcoin needs to get to the same point of like, okay, how do I do that? How do I actually, which app do I use? Which company do I use? How do I get my fiat into Bitcoin? That is going to be the question, not about, no, I heard that it's for drug lords and scammers.
Yeah, this is something I tweeted about a lot when the ETFs are coming out because everybody talked when the ETFs are coming about the money inflow. And obviously,
Yeah,
that's a big part. Like, it's just amazing how much money they have and how much money they will buy in Bitcoin and how much Bitcoin they will accumulate and how much the price of Bitcoin will grow as a result of that. But I think the
yeah,
bigger part, and you touched on that right now, is that they control media outlets, they control narratives. And if they have an incentive to speak good about Bitcoin, this will change the whole game. The narrative
yeah,
will shift dramatically, and I think it will happen extremely fast. So it's like in 5 years, we are like, oh, that was fast. The whole narrative, and I think I have a Tesla example because I was an earlier Tesla investor for like from like I don't know 8 years ago now it's been, and I also saw how Tesla changed the narrative for electric cars. When you remember
yeah,
before Tesla, electric cars were kind of like uncool. It was like this weird nerdy thing to have. It was like they all looked ugly. They all were
yeah,
slow. The battery run up, and Tesla achieved the goal of making electric cars cool.
Yeah.
And I think with Wall Street and the money coming in and all the things that they are controlling, they are shifting the narrative really quickly, which is also bringing dangers in there. There's also a lot of consequences in there with Bitcoin and BlackRock. But I think overall, if you look at it, it's really positive that they come in and shifting the narrative on the mainstream,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden the uncle that always said Bitcoin is a scam, he cannot say that anymore, or will cannot say that anymore in 5 years, because it will be
Yeah.
so clear that's not a scam.
Exactly. It trickles down, and that's why I'm also not really worried that the Western governments are going to sort of ban Bitcoin or sort of hinder its growth. I mean, what they're doing now, I think it's not really hindering its growth. Maybe it is from all the FUD that like the ECB is creating, but they're not really putting any real, like they're not trying to kill it at least for now. And I don't think they will be able to, because obviously Wall Street is now going to say, actually, we don't want you to pass this bill. We don't want you to limit this anymore. It is the most successful ETF launch in the history. There is no way that people who manage, I don't even know how much money altogether, are going to allow the government, who's only elected for 4 years, by the way, that they have a short-term view, while these companies have a long-term view. They will never allow this to happen. And now the genie is out of the bottle. It's only going to be more and more and more. And keeping also in mind that governments are notoriously inefficient and stubborn and old-fashioned. That change takes real long time. I briefly worked in an educational startup, and that is terrible how slowly they are sort of adopting digital technologies and sort of change. It's painful for all these companies that are trying to do it. Working with the government is one of the most frustrating things because everything is very slow. So you can only imagine that yes, they're, they're resisting Bitcoin. I don't think it's because they are sort of worried that it's gonna make them irrelevant. I think they just resist change. They just overall, I think governments don't really like change. Government officials don't really like change because it's too much work. Now we'll have to do all of that. I don't want to do that. It's not worth it. And I don't think this will ever happen. And it's only going to trickle down to everyone else. It starts with Wall Street. It starts with the financial advisors that work for these companies. Then it's their clients who hold, obviously, who are still wealthy people, but not BlackRock wealthy people. Then from there, it's the families, the colleagues, and it just trickles down to suddenly, 10 years later, the media can't say anything bad about it because there's nothing bad about it to say because everybody's educated. Keep in mind, even the internet, when it launched, it was thought of as something that is not going to make it. There is only a FUD, there's only a bubble, it's not going to be around. It takes time until people really understand it. And they're not being malicious. The people just don't like change. I think overall, we're not very good when it comes to change and new technologies because it demands that you change your mindset. And it's very difficult to do. It's like learning a new language if you are in your 50s or 60s. It's like I'm not going to do it. I'm already. This is already past me. Like my parents and computers and internet. When it came out, now they're using it, but when it came out, it was like, I don't need to know this anymore. I'm retired now. This is not my problem. But now they're using it because they realize that you can't. If you are alive, you cannot ignore the internet. And the same is going to happen with Bitcoin. If you are alive, you can't ignore it. You will have to learn about it and you will have to adapt it eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And it all comes down then to game theory, because as we always say, you cannot ban Bitcoin, you can just ban yourself from Bitcoin. And
Yeah,
if actually a country, whatever the country is, saying we don't want Bitcoin and we are banning it, there's so many great examples with China. They're doing it since 2013 and still like 10-15% of the mining power is probably in China. With India in 2018, they banned it, 2020, they lifted again. There's so many examples of that it's just not working to ban it. So
yeah,
they might as well just join it. So that's fun. And it's also, it came up in my mind because I met 1 year ago a guy in France that was not a family member, but like relative, let's say it like that, and he is the opinion that the internet is just passing by.
Yeah.
I never heard that in my whole life, but there are still people out there that don't like the internet, don't want to touch it, and the same with Bitcoin. I mean, there were cartoons of the electricity, like
Yeah.
advertisement against electricity. So I think innovation is just happening, and people resisting change, as you said, and this is just the way to go. And if you want to be on the early adopter side, you will have to deal with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
for the end routine, we have the question. There's the previous guest asked the question for the next guest without knowing who is the next guest, and I'm stumbled. I'm shocked that this question just came up in the 65th episode now, and the question is for you: what is money for you?
Okay. It's a good question. Who asked it?
Uh, yeah, now you asked me too fast. Wait, I will look it up.
It's
Um,
all right.
It was Matteo Di Domenico. He has a small Bitcoin podcast. It's now silent for 6 months, but it's reactivated soon, I think. And he has a really cool Bitcoin podcast, but a smaller account. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know him, but it's a good question. And it's really a loaded question. I mean, we could talk about it forever. Money for me is something that I didn't understand for a very long time, and it's something that I'm still learning about. And I have been working now in fintech or finance since 2018, which is now what, 6 years. Um, and I still don't feel like I really understand money. I think my understanding is better than for most out of the general public, but it's just something fascinating. It's something that everybody uses, something that has been around for millennia, and something that's going to be around in whatever shape or form it's going to be. And nobody really seems to understand it. It's like something we use, and if you ask most people, they don't really think about it twice. And I was the same. I had a relationship with money, but I don't have an understanding of it. And now I feel also, thanks to Bitcoin, that I'm at least starting to ask certain questions, and I'm at least starting to understand it at least a little bit. I don't think you can ever understand something that is such a huge part of the human experience because it is. Um, and I think it's just a fascinating subject.
Why do you think, and I think about it that a lot, why do you think nobody kind of understands money or learns it so late? Like famously, Michael Saylor told this story where he learned about money when he discovered Bitcoin in 2020,
Yeah,
and he was the longest running public CEO of an IT company.
yeah,
And he learned about money with yards and billions of dollars, and he
yeah,
learned about money so late. And when I look back at my story in school, it was never really mentioned. Obviously, money is kind of a topic. Somehow, I learned in the upper school about stocks a little bit because we had a passionate teacher about that topic, but it was just a passion thing of him and nothing more. Why do you
yeah.
think it's not teached, and it's should it be teached from early on, like from 5 years on? 5 years on.
Uh, Absolutely. It should, and it should be taught in schools as well. But I think more importantly, people should talk about it in their families. So I never had a conversation about money and finances with my parents, and they never had a conversation with their parents. And me sort of getting into the whole Bitcoin industry broke that pattern because had that not happened, I would have gone through my whole life not probably being interested in money, and I would have not had this conversation with my children. Now, for sure, once they're old enough, and this could be already being 12, 13, money is going to be something we'll talk about because it's important that they understand it. And why it's not being taught, I think it's probably and I don't want to sound as a conspiracy theorist, but probably by design. Um, Partly by design and partly because we just take it for granted. It's always there. It's just part of our everyday life, so we take it for granted. And nobody, everybody starts working. They get a salary. They pay the taxes. They maybe save, but they spend it. And nobody questions of like, what is this thing that I'm getting? How can I make more of it? Or how can I improve my life with it? And people are not asking these questions. Um, so there is no different answer, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, it's interesting. Also, like usually the end routine is just one question, but it just came up in my mind.
Yeah,
What do you think of homeschooling? Because I see in the Bitcoin area, in the Bitcoin scene, this sub scene, homeschoolers are growing and growing
yeah,
for children. Obviously, I think it's not even possible in some countries. I don't think it's possible in Austria. I don't know about Swiss and I think in France it's possible because Daniel Prince,
yeah.
the podcaster, does it. What do you think about homeschooling?
I I think it's the other extreme of the really classical classroom environment. If you picture like what a school is, you know, Pink Floyd in the wall sort of a topic, then homeschooling is the other spectrum. I think the ideal the ideal case is somewhere in the middle, probably. I think, and mainly I think what school is important for is not the content you learn there. I think it's the social aspect, kids being around other kids, forming relationship and friendships. I think that is definitely, especially in the later parts of the school experience, it's probably the most important thing. High school is, to me at least, about the people, the friends I made, the girlfriends I had. That's what I remember. It's not really, obviously, I have the education, but that's not what I think formed me. It's the people I met that formed me. And I think that homeschooling takes an important aspect. This is the important aspect that it takes it away. The traditional education system, I think, is flawed, and I'm hoping that there's going to be, more of an approach and more of an effort to try to change it. And there's already are like there's like these Montessori classes and all these sort of alternative schools and stuff like that. So it is happening in the mainstream as well. But I would see that homeschooling is just the other extreme of classical education. And then it's up to you to decide, well, is this the extreme you want, or do you want the other extreme, or do you want something in between?
Yeah, it was a fascinating talk with you. I could go on with questions, I think another 10 hours. Thank you for the conversation, Imo. For people that want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to ask you questions?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. So I'm sure you can post the links when you publish this episode.
Yeah, on I even post on X the whole platform, so the whole
Awesome.
episode. So if people are on X, they can just go there on
Yeah.
your tag, and yeah, from all the other platforms, I think you're quite findable. So thank you for being on, and it was a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Robin.